Item number 2, public comment. Raquel, do we have any public?
No, we do not.
Got it. Moving on to number 3, approval of prior minutes, March 3rd, 2025. Would anyone like to make a motion?
Sure, I'll make that motion.
We have a second?
I'll second it.
Thanks, George. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Old business, hearing none. Moving on to new business. Architect's report. Justin, you got an update for us?
Yes, certainly, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. Fairly modest update tonight from our perspective. We included our biweekly CA report in your meeting packet. In it, we identified in the last 2 weeks, we received 8 construction RFIs for a total of 349, 23 new submittals for a total of 826. We do have 2 ATPs for review. When those come up, we can offer a little bit more description regarding those costs. We also have application for payment number 12 that I believe is in your invoice packet this evening. Overall, the work continues to go well. We've been attending on-site meetings. We provided some of our field reports as part of these updates. Still tracking well to finish on schedule with enough time to coordinate the playscapes and the FF&E and technology installation. So everything's still going well out in the field, still continuing to work well with Colliers and Gilbane to resolve any issues as they come up. But I don't know if anybody has visited the site recently, but the site is starting to take shape, curbing, etc., stuff that Robert certainly will be able to go over. So things are starting to really look like they're coming together out there. Be happy to answer any questions as they come up, or if you have any specific questions now.
Any questions for Justin? Maybe after the picture show from Robert? Hearing none, move over to Robert to do your
Perfect. Thank you, Mr. Chair. And thank you, Justin. You actually, it's going to seem like we planned that segue because I'm going to go ahead and share my screen and show you what's going on outside. All right, give it a minute to load, but hope so. Just let me know everyone can see this at this point.
Yep.
All right. So a lot of activity starting on right around the first full week of March on the site. And what I'll kind of show you is basically we had cleaned out this whole back area. These had some storage boxes and some material. We went ahead and cleaned that out. And then what you can sort of see is you can start seeing your parking lots down here. So this is the Gilbane trailer. Daniel Hand is in the background. So we're looking at this lower southeast corner. So the curbing is actually in through here. And if you look closely, we started our first section of sidewalk. So the full sidewalks going in. This image was as of Wednesday last week too. So it's a couple days out of date from last week. Another big item we were working on is getting this stair in. So this is basically the only site stair we have, and this is important. We started on it first so we can release the railings, which we'll need for turnover. So the goal is we actually placed these 2 cheek walls at this point, so these are done, and we'll be able to backfill it and start doing the actual treads and risers by the end of this week, and then we'll be able to come out and measure and release the handrails for that to have them in plenty of time. Couple other details that may not be evident at first, but we have the majority of the site light pole bases in. So that means we also have the conduit running from in between the site poles. So we'll be able to stand these up probably more of a early May activity once we have the binder down for the parking lot. But we're ready to go with the site lights as necessary. Couple other items, and I don't have a great photo for you this week, Graham, but we did go through and actually painted the beam. The purple board here that you see is the soffit being installed down at this main entrance. And if you were to walk the site today, This has actually all been painted and finished. So you can get a good feel for what the main entrance into the cafeteria and what this looks like now with the way it's set up and finished. Another site detail just to point out is we started the metal fascia. So this was new and started last week, and we're proceeding around the building. So this is really finishing off these exterior details. The roofer is basically working on the fascia first, and then we're going to come back and finish off these metal canopies. So by the beginning of April, about 2 weeks, we should be substantially complete or nearing substantially complete with the metal canopies, and we should have the fascia done. Let me zone out a little bit. When this was done, we were working up here at the southwest part of the parking lot, so you can actually see the curving going in and how we were forming it. So this is not placed. This one is. You can see this was stripped on Wednesday when we were doing this. This is actually in the process of being wrapped up. And if I spin a little bit, you can see how we had kind of the site entrance done with the curving as well. So moving right along, we're right where we want to be schedule-wise with these site improvements. This is huge because obviously we need to pave and turn over the parking lots and everything and all the sidewalks along with the building. So jumping on this right when we expected to was huge. Little more detail here just quickly. I'll try to speed this up because I don't want to take too much more time, but you can see the site retaining wall going in at the west playground. This is actually septic. So this was us wrapping up the septic and just getting ready to backfill over this. This work is done. It's this kind of, you can see how those galleys sort of look. And then just quickly, let me just jump over to the north side. So same thing here. The only main thing to point out here is we have a lot of the sidewalk prepped over in this area. So we're going to be working diligently on starting to place all this concrete. And then the only other down here below, the generator showing up tomorrow. So that's a big milestone for us. We did the pad early last week. It's gave it a week to set, and now we have the generator coming out tomorrow to be set over here to continue with this bringing on utilities and finishing off systems. Any questions on the exterior? All right. So just very briefly inside, I figure I'd give you the kind of snapshot of what the gym looks like with it painted, divider curtain in, basketball hoops. So we are continuing obviously with bulk of the work as an interior. This walkthrough is only for the lower level, so it's a little hard to jump around. And the one we have for the main level is a little outdated. It's a couple weeks ago, so wouldn't have changed much from what I showed you at the last SBC. But basically over in main level A, we're kind of at the same point where we started corridors for the VCT, which is big. Classrooms are done. Ceramic tile is done for the most part in the classrooms. So we're still basically working on corridors in A. Main level B is we're finishing up bathrooms at this point. We've had most of the classrooms with the VCT, and we're finishing up the little odds and ends with the ceilings. So we'll kind of push through there with our VCT crew and just kind of getting into the final touches on finishes. Lower B is where we're still pushing to finish piping to the heat pumps and finish ductwork installation, but we had started ceilings and we're moving along mainly on the south side with ceilings, so where the electrical room's located, and then continuing around. So comfortable where we are, but that's probably our biggest area we want to push and just make sure we get in the finishes and keep going with finishes. But as you can see here, we have acoustical wall panels going up. It's been painted for at least for the first coat. We'll end up coming back and painting these acoustical wall panels. So making progress there. I'll show you one quick image in the calf. So just so you can kind of see in this area, we were able to get our first coat on the wall. So this is all taped and started to get painted. You can see where we painted half, basically the media center side ceiling, but we still have to paint over the cafeteria. So you can see this break right here. And then the only other thing, and I wish I could jump up a level, but we did put in the curtain wall at the media center entrance. So if you were to come out today, we have this installed, and then we actually started the interior curtain wall systems and windows over here at Steam and over here at Art. So you can see the frame. This frame's been installed. So kind of pushing through, making great headway with the interior glass and those interior systems, and just getting more and more in the finishes and more areas each day. So, any questions? All right,
Looks great.
moving pedal
Yep.
pedal down, pedal down.
Got it. If there's no questions for Robert, moving on to Adam, you're up.
Good evening, everyone. Just a couple of updates before we get into procurement and invoice packets. We did have a meeting on site with some of the planning and zoning staff, just to start talking about end of project closeouts and conditions and what they'll need as part of the site portion of the eventual certificate of occupancy request. So that was a good meeting, a productive meeting. Maybe some items we want to look at in terms of some of the site components that come out of it, but the bigger component was just to make sure that we're coordinating with them, just like we've been talking with the building official along the way as we get towards turnover of the building to the town. In another upcoming coordination item, we've got a call tomorrow scheduled with the IT installer for the MDF and the IDF network closets. That's again with Gilbane and with them, just to talk about when that work wants to happen and ensuring that the construction side of things has what they need in order to do the equipment startup for the mechanical systems. And also so that way the town can get the network started in those closets and tied into the overall district internet. So that's another one of these little coordination items that springs up and you need to keep working through them. As in addition, talk with Ben and Peter about the overall district-wide moves of teachers and staff. So we'll be putting together a little bit of a coordination exercise in terms of when the teachers move in, where the boxes are going, how that relates to the furniture installations, and making sure everyone's dancing to the same sheet of music and no one's stepping on each other's toes when we get to those summer activities. So those items we're kind of looking forward to getting ahead of while Gilbane works to complete the nuts and bolts of the construction effort. Aside from that, that's really the kind of update we have for tonight. Like I said, besides the items we'll talk about here shortly for procurement and invoices. Any questions? All right, if it's all right, Graham, I'll do my typical
Yep.
screen share.
Perfect.
All right, so we'll go through Gilbane's ATPs first, and then we'll do the other procurement items. This first element doesn't actually require any vote. This is a reference item for $6,581 ATP 80. This was approved on an expedited basis by Peter and George. Just reporting back here for the standard process. This was for some basically handhold coordination work within the fiber line. I don't know if this was discussed in this meeting, but basically we're working with the playground vendor or playground manufacturer and laying out those footings compared to the equipment. There was a conflict found. So one of the fiber lines needed to shift and there needed to be additional handhold pull box and infrastructure installed so that way the fiber line could be run for the internet without interfering with the playgrounds. So again, no vote needed because this was approved outside of the meetings, but just reporting back here.
Thank you.
The two ATPs up for vote tonight. First, ATP 70 for $3,060. This is some coordination items between the kitchen equipment as submitted versus some of the basically outlets and circuitry within the kitchen. So effectively just matching up the two to ensure that we have sufficient power for all the various final pieces of equipment that came through from the vendor. And the second ATP 77 for $6,383. There were basically two downspouts at the high roof that needed splash blocks that weren't shown on the drawings, and two downspouts that at the main canopy that weren't shown in the architectural set. So this ATP resolves those two items and make sure that we have them at the canopy roofs. All right, I'll pause there before we switch into the other procurement items. If there's any questions, and I can show the draft motions up on the screen here.
Got it. So we are ready for, would anyone like to make a motion?
Sure, I'll be the reader. Motion to approve ATP 70 for the change to Gilbane's existing construction contract in the amount of $3,060 for changes to electrical equipment per kitchen, for the kitchen per RFI 227.
Do we have a second?
And I'll
Sorry.
second it if Woody's not there.
Yeah. Beat you to it. Okay, George,
was,
thank you, George.
I
Thank
was
you.
on mute.
Yeah, no problem. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, motion to approve it. Oh, sorry. A motion to approve ATP 77 for the change to Gilbane's existing construction contract in the amount of $6,383 for the added downspouts at the canopies per RFI 257.
Do we have a second?
I'll second that.
Thanks, Woody. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Moving on. Adam, if
All right.
you'd,
So just before we leave the Gilbane section, there is a ATP that Gilbane is currently wrapping up. It wasn't available for this meeting, but Gilbane has requested that might be able to be approved in between meetings. This is for the cubbies. So they're working through the final bits of pricing to have those lowered, like we discussed at the last call. Rob, do you have the ROM on that?
Yeah, we're still when we previously discussed it, we were looking at it in that $30,000 range for just pre-K and K, and it's still in that same order of magnitude.
So the request would be for the SBC tonight to see if there's any exception to Peter and George potentially reviewing and approving that ATP in between meetings, just to keep that moving. The schedule looks like the mill worker may be able to accelerate some of that work earlier than sort of the end of the exercise. So just want to have that one buttoned up if we can. So usually the limit on that is 10,000, but the request was to not necessarily have to pull a special meeting if everyone is fine with Peter and George reviewing that after Tecton and Colliers is obviously reviewed, and obviously Gilbane is fine.
okay, I think we made a motion last meeting to, along those lines. I think we made an informal motion that would allow us to do that anyway.
Yeah, as long as that's the interpretation, wanted to just double check.
Yeah,
before
I personally am okay,
proceeding.
but I don't know the committee, if everyone's on board with that same.
Mhm.
Okay, so I
very
don't
good.
think we need a motion. I think we're just a consensus. Unless
Yep.
you think that. But otherwise, that last motion, I think we voted that they're up to 30, whatever, give or take.
Okay, no, we'll proceed thusly.
Beautiful. Thank you.
All right, back to the procurement. So there are two sort of outside procurement items tonight, one for the furniture AVIT, and then one for Ryerson Hazmat. First one is the last major FF&E component. This is for the wireless access points. They came in right about what we were expecting. So on the whole, you can kind of see where we're landing. Right about what the estimate was, slightly higher, but well below what some of the upset budget might have been if inflation had gone kind of rampant. So all in all, successful FF&E purchasing exercise all the way around. So the motion that'll be, I'll show up on the screen here shortly, is for Presidio for these wireless access points for just over 114,000. The second procurement item outside of Gilbane is for Langen. I don't actually recall if we had brought this up about a year ago or so, but if you recall, at the beginning of the project, there was a notion to demolish Ryerson. Ultimately, it was determined for the project team that the Ryerson demolition would not be in base scope when we went to bid. If any of you have been hearing some of the discussions at the Board of Selectmen, there is a desire from the Board of Selectmen to at least take the next step in pursuing Ryerson demolition as potentially as part of the project funds. But regardless, this quote from Langen represents what their scope would be to go into Ryerson, do the hazmat assessment, take samples, develop what the hazmat scope would be, and then ultimately produce drawings and specifications, and then during construction and demolition, actually go and monitor the hazmat abatement work. For tonight, obviously some of that scope is well down the road for when the demolition would occur. The motion that I've put forth tonight would release or authorize Langen to conduct the material survey and the report, the phase 2 environmental field investigation, and the phase 2 letter report. Those are largely related to some of the underground storage tanks that are adjacent to Ryerson. So basically, this is a testing and documentation exercise, and the outcome would be a series of reports and a high-level cost estimate to kind of before the town takes the next step into pursuing the actual documents and bidding and contracting to demolish Ryerson. The schedule for this is intended such that Langen would go out in the summer after Ryerson is no longer occupied as a school. So everyone's been moved out and it's just a town building. So that way we're not running into trying to jump around and work around existing occupants when they're doing some of the hazmat sampling. Langen is the current town provider for hazmat monitoring for district wide. So that's why we were able to secure this quote underneath that current umbrella of their competitively bid services. So, like I said, those 3 tasks is what's on the docket for tonight. Then I would anticipate putting this in front of the Board of Selectmen at the next meeting, just to confirm their intent as well, just because it'd be a larger dollar value of 40,000 to get them to do this.
And Adam, question, so by doing this, we'd be able to better quantify the cost of the demolition project, which.
Correct. One of their deliverables in their task 1 report would be abatement cost estimate. So again, high level, but it's more refined than I think the last time we talked about costs for Ryerson were a very schematic estimate at the SD phase of this project where I don't even know if it was much more than a big round number. So this will provide some specificity to it and identifies it closer to 1 million, 2 million, what have you.
With the hope, at least by the Board of Selectmen, that our remaining contingency funds will be able to accomplish the demolition of that. They may choose to task a different entity with that demolition. But,
in terms of timing, the development and issuance of this Langen report would align well with the substantive closeout of this project. So in theory, we've gotten our certificate of occupancy. There might be some items at the site that are still being completed, but we'll have a good sense of where this project is going to close out at that point, in terms of contingencies, excess funds, etc.
Graham, could you quickly just review for me? I've forgotten over this time about the referendum and our scope as far as the demolition and all that, how it fits into us, because I've heard all different stories.
Yeah. So I mean, and there's different. So, and this is my understanding, and I could be incorrect. So, during the discussion of the referendum, there were some some spreadsheets that showed, I think the demolition of Ryerson being included in the $98 million overall project budget. The question that was asked did not explicitly call that out, that the demolition, but there is a good percentage of people that perceive that the Ryerson demolition should be part of the $98 million project. Right now we're tracking, give or take, be able to accomplish that. If and when the Polson project, the uncertainty is the remainder of the projects. Polson is still in design phase and hasn't gone out to bid. So there may be a desire to try to utilize some of that excess for Polson, but that's, that may or may not be, if, you get into a legal interpretation, whether, because it wasn't in the question, could you use that? Could you use other money for demolish Ryerson? That's above our pay grade, so to speak. So the selectmen have said, they'd like us to at least consider, firming up the budget and finding out, do we have enough money to do that? Or, do we need a couple $100,000 more, this is also assuming that we're returning the 3.45 that they'd given us previously. I believe they officially requested that back at the last Board of Selectmen meeting. So we no longer have that 3.4 million. So right now we're somewhere between $1 and $2 million remaining in our contingency. I think Adam would, obviously there's a lot of things going on. And the number that was quoted for, I believe the number that was shown in that spreadsheet a couple of years ago was like, I think 1.6. So we're, very close, but that was based on any testing. And you probably don't want to do testing when you got an occupied school, because if, something happens, you rather not know that potentially, and not likely to be a problem, but you don't go testing an occupied school because you can only create problems for yourself. So that's why we're waiting until after the building is vacated. We'll do that. We probably will have a conversation about PCBs and testing, and that's a nuanced type thing. That we'll have that conversation before we actually do any formal PCB testing. So that's my understanding of where we are. Is that makes sense, Bob?
So yeah, I guess, so you feel that we're authorized to approve this kind of motion in our scope?
Yeah, I think the selectmen want us to firm up the number. So at the very least, they know this needs to be done. We have funds to do that. There's also a possibility of maybe we don't demolish Ryerson. At one point, I remember there was some discussion about selling the building, or I don't know how serious that is. Right now, the school has not turned the building back to the town. Right now, it's still owned by the Board of Education, but I think the expectation is they will be returning it to the town shortly. So all we're really committing now is to do the initial investigation to determine what the dollar value is, of the abatement within the building, to get a better handle on the dollar value, the cost of construction, of demolition. So
Okay.
I think that's, anyone ever, Adam, did I summarize that to your recollection?
That matches my recollection, and just in terms of including the hazmat survey work as part of this project with this body versus the Board of Selectmen. Right now, the project budget has sufficient funds that we've kept in this line item, with the notion that there might be some hazmat initial work done. So this 40,000 would be allocated to that budget line item without pulling from contingency funds to go do so. I would just because this is bridging multiple bodies between Board of Selectmen and School Building Committee, I have to go before the Board of Selectmen on Monday anyway for that wireless access points, 114,000. So I would include this as part of the discussion for that meeting as well, just because the request is coming out of Board of Selectmen. So that way we're all on the same page in terms of what's being done. Peggy had requested, or at least had mentioned that this was something that they would be pursuing. So I think everything is in alignment with everything I've heard from both School Building Committee and Board of Selectmen. But I'll bring it up again on Monday when I go before them for the wireless access points.
Unless you want to buy a slightly used elementary school, Bob.
Yeah, I think I'm good.
We did sell Island Avenue, as most people will remember. We did sell Island Avenue to a third party, but that was a unique situation where we had someone who was very interested in, who was currently using the school for that purpose, and was interested in buying it. That's probably few and far between. But we might pursue our adaptive reuse, well, a reuse land, but it's, it's not, this land I don't think is as valuable as Island Avenue property was for, residential development.
All right, I'll reshare the screen for the motions for these two.
Ready
Would
for me
anyone
to read?
like to read? Yeah, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Jen.
Sure. Motion to award pre-demolition hazard materials and environmental professional services at Ryerson Elementary School to Langdon for the amount not to exceed $40,000 for task 1, 4, and 5 per their quote dated 3/4/2025. Additional task from this proposal may be authorized at a future date.
Do we have a second?
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Excuse me. Motion to approve a quote from Presidio in the amount of $114,924.15 for wireless access points per Connecticut State Contract 18 PSX 0210.
Do we have a second?
I will second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion accepted. Oh, and Bob, just before we actually do the testing, we'll have a meeting, with all the parties and make sure we're all, we're aligned in what we're testing and looking for before we go in blindly. So,
All right, last bit is the typical monthly invoice packet. We have invoices from the commissioning agent for their ongoing commissioning services. Also from the commissioning agent for the supplemental envelope testing that they've been contracted to do at the curtain walls and skylights, some of the spray testing there. Monthly invoice from Colliers, Michael Horton, who is also our special inspection coordinator for those ongoing services, Mavis and Young for stormwater monitoring, Tecton's monthly bill, and Gilbane's invoice number 12 for a total of just over 3.1 million.
there's the big one. Sharon, you gonna bring us home?
All right, I'll take it home. Motion to approve the invoice package dated 3/14/2025, including invoices from BVH, Colliers, Michael Horton, Nafis and Young, and Tecton in the amount of $84,998.18, and construction pay requisition 12 from Gilbane in the amount of $3,073,318.03 for a total approval of $3,158,316.21.
Thank
I'll
you.
second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Unanimous?
Thank you, everyone.
Got it. Let's see here. Moving on to the next item, public comment. Do we have any public, Raquel? Anyone with their hand
No.
raised?
No, we do not.
Got it. Moving on to number 8, remarks. Anyone have any remarks, comments, anything they'd like to add? Would anyone like to make a motion to adjourn?
I'll do that. I make a motion that we adjourn.
Woody, do the honors?
Absolutely. I'll second that.
Hey, all in
See you later,
favor?
guys.